Hello, everyone. You're all very welcome to the Technology Ireland ICT Skillnet webinar series, which is aptly named Lock Down Your Learnings. I hope you're all keeping well and enjoying the new normal, which we're all experiencing. Today, the aim is to lock down your learnings in tech for good. So let me start by introducing myself. So my name is John McGrath. I am a senior managing consultant with IBM Ireland, and I'm also the leader of the IBM Tech for Good team, which is based in the IBM Ireland Dublin Software Lab campus in Mulhuddart. Now, in today's presentation, I'm going to introduce you to this IBM Tech for Good team and speak about its mission and its projects. But before I do that, I wanted to start with a little general background on the IBM Corporate Social Responsibility function. Before I start, I want to stress that I'm not actually a member of IBM CSR, but I have worked very closely with CSR for many years and in many countries. So I want to give you my perspective and my understanding of the CSR function within IBM. Now, as some of you may be aware, IBM has a long history of community engagement. In fact, it's been globally recognized for its work in many forums and many instances. The IBM CSR organization has a presence in almost every country in the world. And some of the key statistics are highlighted on the slide in front of you. So there are over 3 million students being coached through our STEM initiatives at the moment. We donate quite a bit of financial support to natural disaster events throughout the world. But we also have a long tradition of volunteerism within IBM, and it is very actively encouraged by the organization. Now, one of the key features here is the IBM Corporate Service Corps. And this is where IBMers volunteer on an annual basis for team initiatives which last several weeks, focused on corporate social responsibility initiatives. The mission of CSR, which has evolved over time, is currently focused on two primary areas. Firstly is education and skills, and the second is technology for good, which covers health and disasters. The education and skills area, to kind of give you a little bit of background, that's kind of striving for access and inclusion and quality, providing IBM's best technology and talent to help people across the globe build the skills of the future. The technology for good aspect is helping communities around the world to take on challenges which are both big and small, bringing the power of IBM's technology, its resources, and most importantly, its people to help with these initiatives around the world. And these initiatives vary from education to health and so forth. In a nutshell, these initiatives are focused on making a difference in the world. Now, I mentioned that a major focus of the CSR function was in building skills. I'd encourage everybody to take a look at the IBM.org website, which contains lots of information and offerings which are intended to help students and young people build skills and earn digital badges. It does this through a combination of live webinars and online courses, and naturally it's available anytime, anywhere. So I'd encourage you all to visit IBM.org and check out the offerings and reach out to us if you have any feedback or questions. From a technology for good perspective, so the IBM Technology for Good team is the first of its kind worldwide for IBM. It's established in IBM in Ireland, in Dublin in 2019. It's predominantly focused on the technology for good domain within IBM's social responsibility, and we work on projects all over the world. Right now, there are 12 team members. We're operating out of 5 different countries, and we have worked on 8 projects in total since 2019, and we've got 3 active projects at the moment. So in effect, we're the delivery team for the Technology for Good strategy. We have a particular focus or expertise around AI and machine learning, and particularly in the domain of natural language understanding, which is taking the text of stories and making sense of them and putting a structure on them. Predominantly, the projects we do are supported through the IBM CSR grant function, either in a wholly funded model or in more commonly now in a co-funded model where IBM CSR will partner with external organizations to deliver these projects. And the key part of the focus around the Technology for Good team is partnering with multiple sectors. Beyond just IBM, and the traditional NGO and government agency work that we've done. We're now partnering a lot more with corporate entities and corporate partnerships. And as I talk a little bit about the Traffic Analysis Hub, the Human Trafficking Project, you'll see more about this in action. So why was it set up in Ireland? Well, the IBM Ireland is a reasonably large organization with many stools. So there's an active research lab. We've got our innovation exchange teams in Dublin. There's a history of product development and industry models. And this creates this availability of resources and skilled and subject matter expertise, which enable us to bring new insights and abilities to these projects. So one of the main projects, which I'm going to focus a little bit of this presentation on, is the Traffic Analysis Hub. So the Traffic Analysis Hub is an initiative which was born out of a series of meetings which happened a couple of years ago. And in essence, let me give you a little bit of context on trafficking itself. So most of us have some familiarity with trafficking and modern slavery. The interesting statistics, which are estimated most recently, are there are almost 40 or over 40 million people who are victims of modern slavery throughout the world. And this generates an estimated profit of $150 billion per year. And it is occurring everywhere throughout the world. And more recently in this part of the world, we're very familiar with what happened last October with the container disaster, which had direct links and bearing on Ireland. The other thing that kind of shocked me when I first got introduced to this domain of problems was that almost 20% of the victims of trafficking worldwide are children. What the Traffic Analysis Hub is a self-sustained entity. So it's an independent non-government organization which has been registered in the UK. It was born out of one of our partners, Stop the Traffic, who are a London-based NGO who are focused on using technology to disrupt human trafficking. In 2017, they asked me to facilitate a workshop in London for forming a collaboration and establishing a new entity which would help to disrupt human trafficking. And at that workshop were multiple sectors. I was very surprised that active participation was included the financial institutions, several law enforcement agencies, as well as multiple NGOs. And they created this common goal of sharing data in a secure environment. And what we looked at was how we could use AI to help analyze and process large volumes of data from multiple sources, most of which is unstructured data, or it is story-based data. And these come from case management systems, they come from victim impact statements, they may come from tweets and social media posts, but it's all information that's related to the topic of human trafficking, either as articles or as incidents. And the principle was to establish a timeline and ability to track globally where the hotspots were for different types of trafficking, make it highly filterable, and also to illustrate what routes were being followed and used by the traffickers. Now, the people who are involved in this initiative include organizations like Western Union and Barclays. We have Interpol and Europol are actively involved, as well as numerous NGOs such as Stop the Traffic, Liberty Shared, Passus Libris, etc. And the principle here is that everybody comes together, they share data, but they also share expertise in a collaborative and secure environment. And just to give you a little bit more information on trafficking itself, it is the approach we're taking to this is it is a business. And it is a business that at the moment is low risk and highly profitable. And the whole paradigm needs to be changed. And this is where we're trying to apply technology to help work on this paradigm. In principle, some of the pressing facts and figures here are is it relies on a certain amount of new recruitment per year, estimated to be 20%, which when you work it out is approximately 8 million new victims are recruited per year into this. It is an easy source of money, and it is easy to create the demand for the services. And right now, the risk of discovery is very low and the penalties are not severe enough. So one of the principles of what we're trying to do here by engaging the financial institutions into this issue is to change the paradigm around approaching the business of human trafficking and making it a risky proposition for people to get engaged. And that's the whole principle of the Traffic Analysis Hub. So looking at the hub itself, it is an area where partners can collect, analyze, and share their data. The analysis is intended to generate new insights and also to validate the extent of the problem. And we're looking at some objectives which vary from tactical to strategic here. So we're trying to validate the extent of the problem. We're trying to focus on the areas which are hotspots. We're trying to generate new insights. We're also trying to optimize resources. So by pooling not just the data and the expertise, but the resources in a secure environment, we are getting better results and better outcomes. And the ultimate objective here, as I say, is to change the risk profile, disrupt it as a business, and ultimately lead to prevention. And prevention is a very interesting challenge. This is where we're trying to use the data and our partner expertise to understand why certain communities are sources of trafficking. So what makes them at risk? And if we were to disrupt in community A, where are the next communities where the traffickers are likely to target? So we can move to those ones. So some of the proposed or the current features of the Traffic Analysis Hub are things like the map view, the report and collaboration area, and visual insights. I'm going to show you some screenshots to help you understand visually what I'm talking about. Also, then, we've got a list of the current and interested participant groups. So initially, as I mentioned, we started out with 3 primary sectors, which were focus areas for us. These were the financial institutions, the non-government organizations, and law enforcement. And we had really good participation from these sectors. Now, recently, we've started to see a lot more engagement from other commercial entities. So organizations who are involved in transportation and tourism, organizations who are involved in retail and construction, etc. And we're also getting a lot more involvement from government agencies. And there is actually a new pillar which has most recently joined the initiative, and this is the Education and Research Institute. So if we look at the map view, this is just to give you a bit of a feel for what the system does. Once you have authenticated into the system, and the Traffic Analysis Hub is a subscription-based model, and the intention of IBM was to establish an enterprise which was self-sustaining. So while Traffic Analysis Hub is an NGO, it is intended to be a self-sustaining entity through the subscription model of its members. And different types of organizations pay different fees in the subscription to get access. But when they get access to these 3 core features: the map analysis, the collaboration area, which is called the Analysis Register, and the News Explorer, which is a visual insights tool from IBM Research. When you're in the map analysis, this is the primary area that an analyst operates in. They can see where the hotspots of trafficking are globally. Along the bottom, there's a timeline where you can select the period of time you're interested in. So in this case, we're looking at the 1st of April 2019 to yesterday. The analyst is able to make map filtering selections. So in this case, the analyst is looking at the sources of sexual exploitation in the data set from the 1st of April to yesterday. And they're able to see where the clusters are of intensity. So those circles with the numbers, they're the clustered hotspots. The blue shading areas, they're the heat map showing where the intensity is visually. And then we have a chloropleth by country, which gives illustration of which countries are most affected as sources. So this is information which enables an analyst to create a picture that they're particularly interested in. Using that picture, they can then generate an analysis report. And this goes into the Analysis Register, which is a library of such reports. This enables organizations to collaborate with other partners who are members of the hub to generate insights using their expertise and their data and analysis into particular aspects of the problem, and then store it in the system for others to reference and also be able to use as templates. The third part that I want to just mention is the Visual Insights tool. So this is an IBM Research tool which they've kindly given to us to include in the Traffic Analysis Hub solution. This is a way of looking at data which is contained visualized through a network analysis model. So this is not in the map context. So how do different reports connect to each other and relate to each other based on the tags that are applied by the AI engine, the natural language understanding? So the natural language understanding looks at news media, and this is the Watson Discovery News collection that we're looking at here. and it will automatically generate entities related to people, organizations, companies, locations, and concepts. And using those entity tags, we're able to create a tag cloud, which allows an analyst to drill in and isolate within the larger network diagram the areas or articles that might be of most interest. And they can easily navigate. They can review the article, they can link to the source, or they can look at the summary information. Now, I'm going to just a shameless plug before I leave the Traffic Analysis Hub. As a board member, if anybody here today is interested or would like to learn more, the website URL is there, it's trafficanalysis.org. We'd encourage you to take a look at that, or if you know organizations who may be interested or useful, either feel free to reach out to me directly or look at the website for more information. There's also an application or a smartphone app called the Stop app, which my team developed last year for Stop the Traffic, and this enables you to report suspicious activity anonymously to stop the traffic. So it's available through the Google or the Apple stores, depending on your device. Please feel free to download this as well. The next project I want to talk to you about is related a little bit to human trafficking, but this is focused in migration and population displacement. And we worked with an organization called the Danish Refugee Council, which is an organization which was founded in 1956 and operates in over 40 countries worldwide. They tend to operate in conflict-affected areas, and they have some 9,000 employees and another 7,500 volunteers working with them. Now, the project spanned many years here, and it actually originated out of an IBM research proof of concept called Populations, Refugees, and Migrants. And this PRM proof of concept was focused on the Balkan migrant crisis in 2015. And the intention at the time was a research investigation to test the use of industry models for predicting migrant routes and volumes. So this, in effect, was using a water flow model to understand how the migrants were moving through the Balkan region based on factors such as weather, availability of access to borders, the best transportation links, etc. Out of that PRM project, the DRC worked with us for an initial solution, which was focused to predict the volume of migration from one source country to 5 target European countries with a 1-year predictive horizon. So this was for the next 12 months, what are the likely predicted volumes of migrants who are going to be coming from Ethiopia to these target countries. Towards the end of 2019, we started phase 2 of the project. And phase 2 is the one that I'm talking about mostly here. So this is where we took phase 1 and we expanded its capabilities, but we focused internally on internal displacement within 3 target countries. This is Afghanistan, Myanmar, and Mali. And we used almost 50 open source data sets with over 140 different indicators to establish a forecast model which could predict baseline forecasts for up to 4 years in advance. And I'm going to show you a screen grab of this to make it easier for you guys to visualize what we're talking about. But the key sort of features of this solution are that predictive model, which is system generated, and then the ability for a user to generate a what-if scenario. Finally, this concept of a causality model. And this is really looking at what are the most influential indicators which contribute to a certain outcome. So if we look at the screenshot here, so this is the forecasts and scenarios. On the top right of this, you're seeing the forecast for Afghanistan. So it does a prediction for 4 years in advance based on the last date for which we can get data in the open source world. So in this case, we have observed values up to 2017. We are able to make a prediction for 2018, 2019, 2020, and 2021, which is really helpful for a predictive model because 2 of those years should be known values pretty soon. So what happened in 2018 is more certain. 2019 becomes a little less certain, and so on. Now, what you're looking at, the green area, is the area of uncertainty, and that expands as we go further into the future. Along the bottom is the scenario what if, and this gives the user the ability to say, well, there's a basic system-generated forecast, but what if the economy was to deteriorate or governance was to be worse or there was to be a natural disaster event? What would the forecast look like then? So this scenario capability allows the user to generate a user forecast. And that user forecast can then be used to generate a situational report in the same way that we do the analysis reports in the human trafficking project. There's also a pretty extensive set of dashboards and reports, and this allows the country managers for the DRC to look at a particular country, to see boilerplate information about that country in terms of World Health Organization data or World Bank data, and then also to pick indicators we're specifically interested in. So in this case, we're looking at Afghanistan, we're looking at total force displacement. We can see the volume for the last period we picked up data. We can see whether that has increased or decreased from the previous data year. We can also see what the average is across all years. And then we can see the other top countries who have displacement for 2018. And along the bottom, we get some charts and graphs that help to explain a little bit more detail on what we're seeing. I'm going to try to cover as many of the projects as I can today, but what I want to talk to you about was another project. This is for FoodCloud, which is an Irish NGO. FoodCloud have a really unique and interesting approach, or business sector, if you like, that they address. This is to do with recycling best before produce from retailers to charities and needy bodies in a manageable way to avoid food waste effectively. So some of the headline figures here are 1 in 7 people worldwide are experiencing food poverty. Globally, 1.3 billion tons of food is wasted per year. And in Ireland, that's 1 million tons of food is thrown out by businesses and consumers every year. This feature, we started to build a solution which would allow us to leverage a blockchain. And a blockchain is an indisputable ledger, and it's intended to support the regulatory requirements associated with redistributing food waste like this. In effect, what happens is a retailer will contact FoodCloud through our system to say we have a certain amount of items who are best before and available for collection. Then the charities who are subscribing to the system can then go in and subscribe for those donations. Everything is tracked in the ledger, so we know exactly who offered it, when it was subscribed, when it was collected, when it was distributed, where it was distributed, etc. And this creates a system that is trackable and manageable. So in addition to the blockchain piece, we also added in the same sort of geospatial analytics for food waste and distribution. But we also added in a number of custom business intelligence dashboards, which are unique to FoodCloud. Another project is the United Way 211 call data. So United Way is a large organization in the US. Some of you guys might be familiar with it or aware of it. In effect, a 211 call is a non-life-threatening emergency call. Typically things like homeless people seeking access to shelter or people seeking access to food banks, etc. So what we were doing here was looking at gathering all the 211 data across North America into a solution where we could start to look at correlations across time, location, and need categories and the interdependencies between these that might be visible in a map or in a report that's not easily discernible when you just look at the raw data. And ultimately, what we're trying to build is a solution which supports the ability of United Way and its partners to influence government policy, but also to identify where patterns may be emerging in the data sets from 211 calls that may also have been seen historically in other locations. And therefore, we may be able to establish what the underlying factors are. The last project I'll talk to you guys about is the Collaborating for Health data platform. So this is a UK-based NGO who are working to prevent non-communicable diseases, so chronic diseases. And the principle of this is establishing a community-based access to information about better life choices, such as healthy food, access to exercise and facilities. It involves auditing or surveying the as-built environment before the project with C3 begins and after. And the principle is to establish, what infrastructure is available, what kind of foodstuffs are offered and sold, what kind of access to transportation links, etc., are available in a disadvantaged community. Then put together a list of action items that can be acted on, and then work with partner organizations, again, the commercial entities in the community, other interested partners, and the EU-funded grant organizations to try and change the as-built environment and then repeat the audit to see if the outcomes are likely to be different. Now, this is a project that's ongoing at the moment, and we're hoping to deliver this towards the end of September this year. Hopefully, you can see that Tech for Good is an example of corporate social entrepreneurship. You might also be interested to know that Waterford Institute of Technology is leading a European research project called Embrace, and Technology Ireland ICT Skillnet is the other Irish partner in that initiative. There are also 8 European partners in the consortium. If anyone's interested in learning more, please reach out to the ICT Skillnet team. And at this point, I think, Aideen, we can start to look at some of the questions. Elaborate on why MIT and Carnegie Mellon have joined the TAH. Okay, so MIT has an initiative called the Task Force on Human Trafficking, and they produce reports which look at the extent and the impact of trafficking worldwide. They've approached us recently to partner with us on a part of that report which focuses on the impact of COVID-19 on the business of human trafficking worldwide. Now, this is a partnership between the Traffic Analysis Hub plus some of our NGO partners and financial institutions, looking at all aspects of how the business has changed during the pandemic. And what we're looking at is the changes in incidents which are reported in public media, and we can see a marked decline in that post March 11th, when the global pandemic was declared. And then we can also look at how the financial transaction patterns may change in the same time periods. So again, we're starting to look at information which suggests that online activities, especially sexual services, may have increased during those periods, and payments in the financial institutions are bearing up that thesis. So that's the MIT piece. They're interested generally in access to the data in the Traffic Analysis Hub and the analysis features that they can do with that data, but they're also partnering with us specifically on the COVID-19. From a Carnegie Mellon perspective, we're looking at, they have a previous research paper where they looked at the correlation between young female homicide, the prevalence of human trafficking or sexual exploitation within human trafficking in certain US cities, both post and prior to FOSTA Nesta, which is the US legislation which shut down websites like Craigslist and Backpage. So Carnegie Mellon are interested in us augmenting their data research sets with the incident reports of human trafficking, and also with the later the arrest and prosecution information that we may have gathered from our law enforcement agency partners. Okay, so Carmel, a lot of great social initiatives give back to societies by IBM. What is the value to IBM of delivering these projects? I guess there's brand reputability. There's also, it is part of the corporate culture of IBM that they actively encourage IBMers to get involved in their communities and to support worthy causes. There is also the ability for us to reuse our technology and the technology which we develop and deploy into commercial sectors for various reasons and for various solutions. We can look at these and redeploy them and reuse them for societal issues as well. So there is that ability for us to reuse our technology and also to expand sometimes the capabilities of those technologies through these projects. Now, are there any successes in detecting human trafficking by using the Hub? There are a number of organizations. Now, the Hub is a wide umbrella entity, and it looks at both the people who are the NGO community who are analyzing the macro view. So the view of where are the hotspots globally and how are these changing over time, what routes are being followed by the traffickers. But in conjunction with that, we work with organizations like Europol and Interpol, and specifically we're now working with some of the state organizations, the law enforcement Department of Justices in the states, on their particular data sets related to their own locations. And they're using the data at a more granular level to look at who are the key players, cross-matching those, the properties of those key players with businesses that they're related to, phone numbers that they reuse, and email addresses, etc., to try and understand the interrelation between these organized crime groups. So there are some successes. Unfortunately, the human trafficking process, once it gets into the law enforcement domain, takes a long time to progress from investigation, gathering data, gathering evidence, to arrest and prosecution, etc. So we believe probably towards the end of the year, early next year, we'll start to see more instances of these kinds of interventions as a result of the organizations who are able to access that data related to human trafficking in the hub. Thanks for sharing the insights. How do you determine and shortlist the projects Tech for Good focus on? Is it national, international selection panel? Is there any public input? That's a really good question. Currently, the projects tend to come through to my colleague, who is the IBM CSR representative for Ireland, who's Deirdre Kennedy in IBM Ireland. So she will look at the initial sort of opportunities or requests for project aid. These then tend to be categorized into fitting within the domain of what IBM CSR is focused on. So I mentioned earlier, either within the educational skills area or within the technology for good. And if it's a match to something that we believe we can bring our technology and our expertise to, then it goes into a short list where we start to look at, the viability of these initiatives. Now, a lot of what we're doing right now is starting to look at co-funding opportunities where organizations are coming to us with a certain amount of funding and in need of technology, which is similar to what we've developed through the Trafficking Hub and these other projects. And then we reuse these in partnership with those organizations to generate a new technology footprint and possibly, in an ideal world, a self-sustaining entity which is able to leverage that technology to perform their interventions. I want to thank you all for your interest in attending and the time you've given us today. I hope it was worthwhile and that you've enjoyed the webinar. Please feel free to pass on the details to your colleagues and anyone you might be interested or would benefit from joining us next time. I mentioned at the beginning, this is a webinar series. So on your screen now, you should see details of the next few webinars which have been organized. All are available to book on the ICT Technology Ireland Skillnet website, which is ictskillnet.ie. You'll find details about all their programs there. I guess with that, I'll just say stay well and remember to join us next Thursday at 2:00 for our next webinar.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this webinar, please follow us on Twitter and LinkedIn to be kept up to date with all our news, events and programs. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos like this one.